It's same with the microphone. You could use a microphone on Shabbat, but we don't because we said, officially that it's a reform thing. So that's why we don't use it in the Orthodox synagogues, even though it was used in the past. But as a matter of fact, everybody uses. Everybody, all Orthodox Jews, I mentioned several times, use microphones on Shabbat because when you talk to someone who has a hearing device, you are using a microphone.
Yeah, but that's דבר שלא מתכוון.
No, it's not דבר שלא מתכוון. You are מתכוון. Otherwise, you would stop talking to them.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I'm telling you. Baruch. It's the same exact thing. It's only a question of perception. Rabbi Yosef Mishash says clearly there's no difference between them. Yeah. It's only, I understand, it's a question of perception.
Yeah.
And now it's a big problem because people say, okay, I could summon a Tesla Uber driver with Siri. I didn't do anything. Siri, get me an Uber and that's it, you're done. And you say, I want one with a Tesla. So you didn't do anything with the Aita.
What is the difference between using an electric car where you open the door and the light comes on to a refrigerator where you open the door and the light comes on?
That's a good question. But not out of my scope today.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. That's a good question. Bichlal, meaning we have to define what electricity is. Definitely it's not fire. There were people, would say if you open the fridge or Shabbat and you see that the light is on, you can't use it at all. But other rabbis said, if this is the case, open it b'shinui, open it with your elbow. Meaning, not that opening it with the elbow makes it not forbidden, but rather they recognize that you're really not doing anything.
You cannot open with the elbow. No way.
In the modern fridges, yeah. מדבר על המקור 11.
Not unless you install like a hook or something.
Yeah, okay.
Magnetic,
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying what they said. They meant open it differently, but the idea is that the actual action, as much as you turn it around as much as you want, it is not called starting a fire. It is not a biblical prohibition. And the question is whether the rabbis of modern time should have put it under the rubric of a prohibition at all. So this is the discussion. So some say, there were no cases of people who got stuck, the fridge was on, they wouldn't open it the whole Shabbat, they remain hungry.
their Shabbat.
Right, so is this the right thing? On the other hand, we're going to use electricity, and then let's say people push, for usage of electricity in certain ways, then the whole character of Shabbat can be completely disappear. So that's the.
What about the riding the metro if there's no money involved?
Riding the metro is not a problem at all.
Really?
There's a question that Rabbi Yosef Mishash was asked in the 50s. Someone who lived in Paris asked him about that, and he answered, "There's no problem." It's like
to go to synagogue, not to go to.
To go. If you go about for Onik Shabbat, it's still a mitzvah. I think this is. We don't have to do the Sefer Haggadah today. It's an interesting question of halacha. So Rabbi Mishash was asked about that, and he said, "There's no problem. What do you have? You have the card with you, right? And today you have a magnetic stripe. All the cards that you use in the metro, at least in New York. I know how it's here.
Here too.
Yeah, okay. I've used didn't have enough. I wanted to use the metro, but all the stories about the accidents and this dissuaded me. So it's the same thing. You use them. Yeah. So you could use this on Shabbat because it's only magnetic, and the light that comes on is a LED light. So there's no problem with that. I just published this week also a halacha. This is a question that has been back and forth, surfaced for years. The question of using key cards on Shabbat. You're in a hotel, and you can only have they only have key cards. They don't have.
Today there is no key.
There are no keys, right? Today you still have niche hotels catering for the Orthodox community.
In Israel.
No, around the world, like Switzerland, France.
Hotel, there was no.
No, there are little, really small hotels that only rely on religious tours and all that, and they have keys available. But it's a crazy thing. So what people do usually, you go to the concierge, you say, "I forgot my key," and the whole story, and they think that the Jews must be complete idiots because they all forget the keys, and when you give them the card, they say, "Oh, I don't know how to use it," and because nobody wants to say. I explained this to the Marriott employees came for a conference to learn about what can we do for for Orthodox guests, and I told them that's probably one of the most important things you could do. Save them the trouble of pretending that they can't open the door. Well, I am. We're talking halakha instead of this. It's okay. It's still it's an important show altogether. So.
Sorry, open a can of worms. I get it.
No, it doesn't matter.
Occasionally is a Q&A.
Yeah, it's all practical. There are very practical issues. So I told them the Merit crew said if you put a sign, it's like we accommodate or we help Orthodox customers, and you tell them, you just tell us we need to go into the room and we get it. Now the problem is some hotels can provide this for you. It depends on the capacity of the hotel and how many staffers you have there. But you go to the conference in Las Vegas where they have hotels with thousands of rooms, and it's not so easy to go back and forth. So many years ago I gave a class on that 4 or 5 years ago, and someone says I would never do that. Would never use a key card on Shabbat because I said how it's allowed. And then he said how in Vegas, it was in a conference in Vegas on exhibition, and staying in the Venetian, which is a big hotel, and he asked them to open his door. So they asked for an ID, and he didn't have an ID on him. So anybody said it's in my room in the safe or in the drawer. Open it for me, and I'll give you the thing. It was Friday night. Problem is that he also forgot his room number. I mean, he should have checked with them, tell him his name, and they should check. But he went to the room, they opened the door, it's not his room. He ended up spending the whole Shabbat in custody, right, in their, so this is Oneg Shabbat, it's not Oneg Shabbat. So, but, I used to say it in classes, I heard it from Rabbi David Shlush of Netanya, but I didn't publicize it yet. Now, in the last month or so, 2 months or so, Rabbi Nahum Eliezer Rabinovich of Israel, who's now in his 90s, a scholar and a scientist, also a professor of mathematics, very learned man. He's the head of the Yeshiva Birkat Moshe in Ma'ale Edomim, published a Psak Halacha saying that you could use those magnetic cards on Shabbat, even though the light comes on, it's a LED light, it's not a problem. It solves a lot of problems for people in hotels. Sometimes you live, in certain buildings. To enter, you have to, like the building I lived in Brooklyn, had that kind of, you had to, either the guard opens for you, or you have the magnetic card to open. So all these.
There's money in it, though, involved.
It doesn't matter because it's not. It has a certain monetary value, but it's limited only for that specific thing. So. Sliding it, even if you're not, the act of paying is not an act of commerce that's really forbidden in the Torah because you already prepaid. Just deducts from what you've already paid for.
What's the difference between that and a credit card or something?
There's no real difference. There's no real difference. The whole then that's when you open another. It's not opening another issue. That and just in a nutshell, you see that the Torah does not forbid someone from making profit on Shabbat. That otherwise, if the Torah would have ruled like that, then you would have to harvest your fields every Friday because God forbid they're going to grow on Shabbat and you're going to get richer, right? So the same thing for websites. If you have a website, you don't have to shut it off before Shabbat, even though some Orthodox people do because of the perception. But again, if they do shut their website before Shabbat, they can't just shut it for their Shabbat. They have to go the global Shabbat from the earliest it starts to the late, so they have to shut it for about 36 and more hours, maybe 40 hours for the whole thing. So that's another issue. So the whole idea about commerce is rabbinical. The rabbis wanted to limit commerce on Shabbat. So there are certain things that are like this. You use it for mitzvah to go to the synagogue, that this would be allowed because of many other factors that don't make it like regular commerce. But going back to the issue of the card, so Rabbi Rabinovich put out this teshuvah, very detailed, explaining why this is allowed, as well as moving in front of motion sensors and volume sensors and all that. And now there's a debate, of course, raging on in Israel. Someone told me that he was it was in Israel this past week, and Rabbi Dov Linzer, who was the head of the yeshiva of Chovei Torah in Riverdale in the Bronx, is considered like a more modern, like they call it open orthodoxy, he said that you could use it, but, I mean, referring to what Rabbi Rabinovich said, he said you could use the card, but block the, put a tape on the light before. Now, the tape on the light doesn't stop it from turning on; it's just covering it up, and that is typical. I was laughing. That is a typical example of what is happening with the modern Orthodox, open Orthodox halacha. It's the fear of perception of how it's going to affect the next generation. So we have to be open and candid about this. This is the reality that we're facing. We're trying to hide from our children what the nature of halacha is. They're going to go and do the research and understand what electricity is. Electricity is not fire, right? Electricity is whatever force it is, electromagnetic. It's not fire. Rabbi Shlush concludes very nicely. That says, it depends if you talk about classical physics or quantum physics, and it says even scientists are not clear on what exactly electricity is, right? But one thing is for sure, it's not fire. Fire is a chemical process. Electricity is a physical process.
But you transfer in electronic.
You're not
electrons, which is material. You transfer in.
Well, there's no prohibition. The Torah never says there's a prohibition to transfer material. Otherwise, we should stop living on Shabbat because the atoms in our body keep moving. There's always what?
Coal that makes the generator coal. They have to burn the coal in order.
Coal for what? To produce electricity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, but that's a different question about the plants, the power plants.
Hydroelectric.
The power plants. Yeah, but first of all, most of them don't use coal, but it doesn't matter what they use. It's an ongoing process. The plant never stops working. There was an argument in Israel in the 50s that you cannot use electricity at all on Shabbat, not turn on and off, but don't even let. Get off the grid. They wanted to get off the grid on Shabbat, and
now they say because of the hospital.
Yeah, and the argument was that Jews are working there and they have to fix, even if it goes automatically, they have to fix it according to surge and all that, or if there's a blackout. So there's a neighborhood in Bnei Brak. It's the generator neighborhood. You can't spend Shabbat there because the noise of I think some people go the pak, because the whole Shabbat you're like pak. The generators are working. Everybody. Then, like Sammy says, they came out with a sort of a kula, an argument, to be lenient here because you need the electricity to keep the hospitals running and so on. So this is the problem that that we're facing. Someone just emailed me. Her son is a pediatric surgeon in Los Angeles, and he grew up traditionally. He used to be my synagogue there, and he had a case of a father bringing his son to emergency room on Shabbat. He went into an allergic shock. He was exposed to something that caused him allergy and was in shock. He brings his son to the hospital. He leaves the car with the engine running by the by the entrance, and is about to go in. I mean, the doctor came out to they communicated. The doctor came out to accompany him. The father refused to let the doctor. He started fighting with him. He says, "Don't." The doors are automatic, so you move aside. I'm allowed to carry my child because it's pikuach nefesh, because I'm protecting his life, and you cannot do that. I mean, meanwhile, every little delay like that is dangerous. I mean, opening the doors in itself is not a problem. You could just walk in front of the doors, and it will be okay. But you have this mentality of fear of what happens when you trigger it is just. It just became a myth. So what you'll see next is the rabbis will have to start dealing with these issues. They will have to start dealing with what happens when you drive, when you're not going to drive, when you sit in an autonomous electric car, or an autonomous non-electric car. All these issues are going to come up. If people insist on isolating the Orthodox community and say, this is how we have to live, they will have partial success, because some people would cling to that. You always have certain enclaves that say, we want to be more, just like the Amish succeed in a certain way. But the next generation, the future generation, slowly is dropping off that.
Yeah, their children are dropping.
Yeah, people think, people analyze, people read what's out there. They can make the comparison.
The conservative movement is destroyed because of driving. There's no community. There's no Jewish community.
It's true. So there's no question that when you allow everything, it could destroy. But when you restrict everything, there's also destruction, because there's no alternative. If the rabbis would be bent on, instead of saying, we are going to legislate for you what the spirit of Shabbat is, if the rabbis would have been bent on education, of making Shabbat enjoyable for people, right, and provide alternatives, or say, you could use, instead of like launching a campaign against bicycle on Shabbat, say use bicycle on Shabbat, or use public transportation, give options, and then people would know, I limit my usage to this and to certain things. I use my car, electric car, right? Or I'm just saying theoretically when the discussion will come up. But for now, bicycle, bus, metro, right? To go to the synagogue. But that's the only thing I use it for. Then you don't cut off people from the synagogue, but they know themselves what are the parameters. You have to leave it in the hand of the people. And not legislate. This is why the Torah left it deliberately vague. The Torah never says, this is what you, like all the details of Shabbat. The Torah says, Zachor et Yom Shabbat lekadesho. It has to be distinct. It has to be different. And when you look at Yeshayahu, in Tashiv Shabbat Laglecha, Asot Hafzecha v'daber davar. So you behave differently on Shabbat. That's the idea. And I've seen it all over. Families that took care of making Shabbat an experience for their children, succeeded in perpetuating the Shabbat for the next generation. And making it is like getting together, singing, having fun, talking, not necessarily divrei Torah, just being together, spending quality time. And families that for them Shabbat was strict, a list of prohibitions, and you have to say Dvar Torah on the table. And the moment, we finish the meal, we run to a class, they lost it. Because the kids felt that Shabbat comes, I don't see my father, everything is forbidden, that's not something that I connect to. So this is the task, to put the spirit back on Shabbat, on an individual basis.